Now let me ask you. So let's say it's mostly open timber where you're at, but you might have a couple blowovers, and he's headed away from you, and he's headed towards a direction where he might get behind a blowover. Would you call him at him at any point, or would you wait till he gets on the other side of that structure so he's got to turn back around and look? I guess you kind of get what I'm getting at there.
You're definitely going to have to wait and be. So, prime example, I'll go through this. My biggest deer, our biggest bow kill was in Kansas a couple years ago. And I was actually between two creeks, and it kind of necked down. But where this little ladder stand, it wasn't 12 foot off the ground, but it was just a nasty, it was dead on a knob. So if a deer was on the right and you called to him, then he could think that the deer was on the other side of that knob, or vice versa. So it was a perfect calling set. And anyway, the only time, if the deer were dead even with us, was the only time that they could kind of see through there, and have the best angle, because it was elevated on both sides. And so I see the deer we're hunting, and he's only 65 yards. And he's right across the creek, but he's dead to our left, so he could see all the way up under us. But once he got out front, there was all kind of, trees and different things, and then you had that knob right there. So I never said a word. I sat there. I mean, the closest he was then, and I let him fade all the way up the creek till he probably got to 130. But when he did that, he was on the other side of the knob that I was sitting on. And, of course, I could see him. And I immediately, as loud as I could, I hit a roar, and he locked it up, and he was looking the other way. And just kind of started just soft grunting, barrel, 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 kind of like a little chase. And immediately he spun around, laid his ears back, and stood there. And I hit one more little grunt, and he dropped down the huge bank in the creek and came right across and shot him at 27 yards. But he went all the way around that knob. I never said another word. He went across the creek. He went around the backside of the knob, came all the way. He was just getting to the only place that he couldn't see is where he assumed that deer was. And he came all the way around, and we shot him. That was one that kind of like ozonics, where it was getting right at that fringe on the wind, and we pulled it off. But that was a fun one. Me and Hunter Norris was on that, and we were high-fiving because it was 100% like thought it through and called him in there, and that was the only place he couldn't see, and that's where he thought those grunts were coming from. But it's fun when it comes together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now, do you use decoys at all when you're calling, or is it mostly blind?
I've used decoys a good bit. Most of the time, like if it's a field situation, I've used decoys a lot on, I'm wanting to stay on a deer that we've been hunting, and I get a crap wind or something, and I need to back off. And, you still want to be able to hunt that field, but I know I'm not in the game where I can hunt with the current wind that I have. Now, I've had a lot of luck using decoys like that, just backing off of it, get the wind where you can hunt it, and you don't mess up it. You put the decoy out. I put it out facing me usually, and I do spray down the decoys big time. I think that's a huge factor, because if you don't, I think that bubble expands to 6 or 8 yards before he gets to the decoy, and a lot of times you don't get a shot. But I've used decoys a lot in a field situation. I've never used them in the woods or anything like that. But as far as an open field, for one example of that, we were in Ohio, and the deer, it was across the line, and he was bedding on the place we had permission to hunt, but it was only like a 10-acre thicket. And with the wind, there was no way to get close to the corner or anything like that. So for the first 2 days, I said, we got to stay out of the game. And we backed up 200 yards, hung it on a small little tree, and just put the decoy out. And the first evening, deer comes out of the corner and call to him. He comes all the way to us, and right before he gets there, he crosses property line and goes on to the neighbors. So the next day, did the same thing. Still, the wind wasn't right. We were going to push in on day 3. And he came back out with a doe and snort wheezed at him. He saw the decoy, came all the way down the tree line, and we smoked him. So, decoys can put you in the game for sure when you're really out of it. I've used them a lot for that.
Yeah, problem with them, though, is you don't want to really do it like in the timber. You want to do it in the field where they can see it from a long ways because, just like a turkey, if they turn that corner and that decoy's right in their face, it'll freak them out.
100%. And they're going to circle downwind, so making sure that decoy setup is, going to put it where, a lot of people go out and put your decoy at 30 yards and, you got a quarter in wind and he circles it at 50 and gets you and he's gone. It didn't have nothing to do with the decoy. He circled it and finally got the wind. But, same kind of deal. A lot of times I'll put them, if you've got the wind just straight in your face, you can put them a little bit further, but then that puts them circling it between you and that decoy. Hopefully 18, 20 yards. That's me, though. I like a 20-yard shot.
Yeah, I like it easy.
Yep.
That's like my turkeys. I like turkey hunting my farm because they're easy. I like hunting stupid birds.
Yep, I've heard you got some stupid birds over there. A bunch of them.
As long as he wears his contacts, he's all right.
Well, I'm like him. I like him close. The second one I shot this year was at 15 steps. I mean, I hit him with that TSS. I mean, I pillowcased him, dude.
Oh, there ain't no doubt. They're not getting out of there at 15. I can tell you that. Have y'all called a lot in y'all's experience, or is that kind of something you hadn't really done a lot of?
Growing up in Alabama, I mean, I didn't grow up calling a lot because I was hunting timber. Like during the rut in January, I'd hit the rattlebag or something, but nothing really crazy until I started hunting up in Kentucky. I mean, now it's like I get excited for it because I'm a big duck hunter too. So now it's like, hey, I get a little bit of mix of both worlds in this thing now.
I do think it plays I'm talking on a lot. I mean, you'll have people say I hunt public ground. I'm not going to say I would call the same as I do now if I'm, on a national forest and hunting public ground. But I can 100% say that I would not be scared to use it. I do disagree with people saying, if you blow a grunt call here, they're going to hightail it. I believe if you have the right setup and you use it the right way, I mean, I think it's hard for a deer to, just say, I'm not going to go to that, given the right situation. But I'm not going to say they'll do what they do, in some of the places we hunt in the Midwest where it's just, 300 yards marching, crossing a blacktop and whatever else. I'm not going to say that, but I do think, you get into a deer's bubble and in the right time of the year with the right setup, I don't care the property. I think he will do it. If it's right.